You see? So procrastination, what's that old saying? Remember we mentioned aphorisms a few weeks ago? We said aphorisms were these statements that had evolved out of the group mind to warn. It was like that's why elders were so often revered in other cultures. Because the elders were supposedly the repositories of cosmic wisdom. They had watched the years and the generations go by and said, I have learned this. A stitch in time saves 9. What does that mean? That if I act in time, I don't have to go through this whole long rigmarole. But if I don't, then I do, right? So there's, again, the law of correspondences stipulates this and states it very clearly. For instance, if there's a situation in your life, and I'm sure there is in most of us, that is maybe really troubling you or really getting your goat or something, if you took a moment and just kind of calmed down and got detached, and okay. What does this look like on another level? You would find that you probably could trace it. You probably could come to a point where you'd say, what's really going on here is this. And again, that's an aspect of the law of recourse, because if you don't know that, you'll deal with it on a purely physical basis, and you'll probably work too hard, you'll probably overreact, and chances are you won't even do the right thing anyway. Because vision is curtailed at that point. When you're just dealing with something as a physical event, that's it. There's nothing else, which is never true. Cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. The cause exists on a subtle level, the effect is seen on the physical plane. It's always like that. See? So we kind of get to do those things. So you'll understand the law of correspondences, how it works. There's always a sense of a higher thing. When you think you are, shall we say, helping a person physically by doing nothing more than holding a door for them, that has a cosmic counterpart. It might seem like a very trivial or very simple act of kindness, but what would that mean? So those of you who are interested in dream symbology might get a kick out of it. You all know doors mean something, right? You all know that to hold a door open for someone is very different symbolically than to slam a door in someone's face, right? As it is physically. But symbolically, it might even have more of a significance, really, in the long run, you see. So it's important to kind of take note of all this and see how these things, they correspond. And so we early on in my own training, one of my first psychic teachers, actually, she suggested that I take up a deck of tarot cards. I was shocked. In those days, I had no respect for tarot cards at all. I didn't know what they were, but it's always that way, right? Your ignorance is what will cloud the issue. And I was ignorant of tarot. I had never had a tarot reading. I'd never seen a deck of cards, much less given a reading with tarot cards. Basically, to me, it was all fortune telling. That wasn't what I wanted. This woman was very spiritual, very beautiful person, and very clairvoyant. And when you asked her something, she would just seem to look off into space and come back with this wonderful answer for you. First psychic I ever knew. And so the thought of her telling me to take tarot cards up was like, what? You got to be kidding me. It seemed like what a waste of my time. She wasn't using tarot cards. Why should I? It seemed like almost like an insult. I couldn't believe it. And then I said, well, but I want to be like you. I want to see things like you do. And she said, well, this didn't happen overnight, honey. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Right? Law of evolution. I didn't realize that there would have been an evolving. I just thought she just woke up one morning and she was this all-seeing person. And she said, I used to use tarot cards. She goes, and I realized that tarot cards are a very excellent tool that has evolved out of the mystery schools of the yesteryear. That each card is symbolic of many, 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 many things. And that when you get acquainted with the symbols in the tarot, it starts to show you the symbology of life. She said, I want you to study those cards until life itself is like a huge, big tarot card. Like right now, I'm standing in front of you with my hands up like this, and I'm looking at you all, and I'm seeing however many there are of you seated here, and I'm speaking to you. That's a tarot card for me. What does it mean? See, that's up to me to interpret it. You may interpret it as well. You may be seeing it from your point of view, seeing someone up here standing to you, and you're seated in a group. That's another tarot card. Do you see what I'm saying? It's all symbolic, though, and we have to remember that. So that none of it is nothing. You don't take anything on surface value. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Nothing means just what it is. Nothing. And no body either. So any person you look at, number one, they're not a woman, they're not a man. Let's drop that right now. Okay? They're not white, they're not black, they're not whatever ethnic background they seem to be. They're not old, they're not young. All of these being appearances, and usually a bit illusory, I might add. See what I mean? So then you start to really work with your inner sight and really see within. You really start to see what's really going on here. And you realize that what you're looking at is a soul, a great, great oversoul who is just putting one little tiny finger of himself down into matter, touching down through the personage of so and so and so. That's why it's so important to treat people well. You know, you're not just dealing with this person that you think you know. You know, you're dealing with a god. You're dealing with a goddess who is pleasing themselves to look like this interesting anchor. And that's why, you know, you hesitate to criticize anybody. I mean, in that sense of what they, I mean, you know, some of it, I'll admit, is a little way out there. This one's a creative one. You know. But this is what they want, so, I mean, you know, who am I to say, you know? I'll just go along with the program and say, okay, you know, you must have a very good reason why you're doing what you're doing, why you look like that. It's all in the game. So it's very wonderful to see that. And realize the law of correspondences, right? You know, as above, so below. There's also, therefore, something working out on a higher level. There's a reason they're the age that you meet them at. Right off the bat, you know, and so on. So it all starts making a lot of deep, deep, deep sense. And again, nothing is taken at face value. Nothing. It's all quite deep. Very deep. Okay. Another law I'd like to talk about is the law. This is real simple. It was one of the simple ones I'm not going to spend too much time on because it speaks for itself. How about the law of diminishing returns? What does that mean? Yeah. Anybody had a business that fails? You have tasted the law of diminishing returns. That states that what you put out comes back less than what you put out. That's called diminishing return, okay? Now, we all know this little maxim, this little thing about businesses. The first year you're in the red, and then after that supposedly it gets better. Let's hope so. But let's say you're into this business like the 4th year, the 5th year, or maybe you've been doing very, very well, and all of a sudden, it's not so good. I would say don't blame the economy. Change your business. Change your business. The economy is just one factor. You see? Oh, the economy's bad, so my business fails, so that's it. There goes the throw in the towel thing, see? And again, gods don't do that, much less goddesses. Tend to be a little more resourceful in a lot of ways. So, the law of diminishing returns basically states that in any area of your life where things seem to be going down, you need to pay real good attention to that very area and go, what am I not seeing? What am I neglecting? And or what am I not keeping up with? And or what is going on that all of a sudden what was really neat now isn't? You know, the Master Jesus says the suffering is only the breaking of a law. So we need to look at that. So the law of diminishing returns, I think, speaks for itself. In an area of your life where you see something is going downhill. Now, mind you, again, all the laws are interwoven. Do not ever forget the law of cycles. There are cycles to things. There are times when things will go up and things when they will seem to recede, but they're still in the flow. We're talking something that steadily is going down, 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 down. That could be a relationship as well. That could be a situation where you were very, 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 very happy. Now you're not happy at all, like ever. Like it's a bummer. That's called the law of diminishing returns. Something's wrong. You know, what's wrong with this picture? Maybe somebody's trying to control somebody. Maybe somebody's a giver and someone's a taker and it's finally coming to light. Maybe somebody's going through a heavy astrological number and the other person is not aware of it or insensitive to certain cycles and changes. You know, whatever it may be. But the point is, it's called pay attention. You know, we need to do that. We really need. So the law of diminishing returns, okay? You won't forget that. I figured I wouldn't have to talk about that too long. The other one is the law of balance. Similar, real simple. Law of balance states that better not to go to extremes. You Scorpios will have a field day with this one. I know the Scorpios are, and they laugh. They can relate. What does it mean? Scorpio, the reason I say that is because Scorpio tends to be a sign of great power. It's ruled by the planet Pluto, very powerful planet. And it tends to go, because it's like you're carrying 200 pounds on your back. You're just looking for anywhere to lay it down. I mean, you know, can I put this down somewhere? You know, you're not going to be real careful. Well, let's see here. Where was a good spot? Where would it fit in the room? Anywhere. You just boom, right now. That's Scorpio. It's very powerful energy. If any of you know your chart, and if you don't, you should. Here's my little editorial comment for the night. You're missing out. Look up a good astrologer. If you don't know any, come to me and I'll send you to one. But the point is, Scorpio is a sign that of extreme. It tends to be of extremes. Some people have called it like, you're always in heaven or hell. It's one of the two. But I'm not saying that that's not a law. In other words, it's not a law that all Scorpios will always be into extremes. Only that it tends to go with it goes with the territory. It tends to go with a sign. There are many Scorpio beings who have risen above that, very powerful spiritual advanced beings who rise above that and learn something about the law of balance. And then they've got all that incredible intensity to work with in balance. Now you've got an incredible soul. Now you've got a mastery. Because they're not going too far this way or too far that way. Why? Because the law of balance demands that if you go too far anyway, guess what? You're going to get catapulted the other way. I'm going to give an example. I'm going to stick with astrology just because it serves the purpose. There is a sign, Aries, first sign in the zodiac. Okay, strong sign, fire sign. Okay, Arians are rarely shy. Rarely. They can be. I've known a few, believe it or not, but they're rarely shy. Aries is a sign that, by nature, it impels you to do things. It just, boom, next thing you know, you're on the front line. That's Aries. Okay, now. A lot of you, now there's phases of all this, right? Sometimes, I used to be of the school where I thought, oh my God, this is an Aries. I have to deal with this now. I usually felt sorry for the Aryan, poor person. And now I've realized, but then, then with the addition of the clairvoyant sense, I begin to notice that lots of the Aryan people, I saw Aries people, were or had been in a very recent lifetime very timid souls. Nuns, priests, shy people, beaten down, very little self-respect. So guess what? They chose to be born with the Aries advantage of pushing them out front, pushing them up and out, which Aries almost can't help. So there's very few shy ones around. See? So what I'm saying is that you see how there's the law of balance. If they were too inward, sometimes they have to be too outward in the next life so that by the time they come around again, they're going to get a sense of, then they'll be a Libra, like me. Borderline, huh? Did I get away with that? I don't know. No, I didn't. You know what? I have Jupiter in Aries. Guess what? See? So Aries don't always look before they leap. But what I'm getting at really is that law of balance demands balance. So again, if you go too far one way, you'll find that the life, call it the law, will propel you too far the other sometimes. So what is the balance? We try and kind of avoid extremes whenever possible. One of our greatest, wisest souls on earth is the Lord Buddha, the Lord Gautama Buddha. Lord Buddha stated, moderation. The middle path is the best path. He tried them all. He ended up moderate. You don't starve yourself in a fast, but you fast once in a while. That kind of thing, You don't avoid the world like a plague, but you don't get lost in it. You see this kind of thing. There's a sense of moderation involving the sensitivity of the soul. That's called the law of balance, okay? So I think it's real basic. We have all of these laws, as they say, written in our inward parts, in our hearts. So as I'm speaking out these laws, I'm simply putting words in them, I'm dressing them up for you. I'm sure all of you are sitting there going, You know this, we know this. Very little of this would be new to you, I would think. You know it. But sometimes it helps to hear it and get it explained and see how you can tell when you're kind of in sync with it and when you're not in sync with it. That's another one. Here's a good one. I don't think I spoke of this last week, but some of you who are here might remind me. Did I speak of the law of supply and demand last week? Okay, I'd like to speak of it. Again, it kind of speaks for itself. What does it state? That there's always supply for any demand that there may be anywhere in the universe. There's always supply. Why? Because God is not about to play a big joke on itself. Why should God have a desire that can't be fulfilled? Doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, when God is calling the shots, creating the rules and all that, playing the game, doesn't make sense. Why should I yearn for something I can't have? doesn't make too much sense. I mean, granted, we all have done that, I'm sure. As little kids, you want that thing mom and dad can't buy you or whatever. That isn't to say there isn't a supply of it. It just means that, maybe at that point you're not adept enough to negotiate how to get it. That's all. You see? But a lot of kids are, aren't they? Just how to go. The law of supply and demand is a law that has been greatly, greatly, greatly misrepresented. By who? Certain individuals on the planet, both in ages past and the current one, who think they're going to keep perpetuating themselves, but they're not. Have it on good authority. Who have tried to fool us into thinking in terms of limited supply. Limited supply. Is that it? See, there you go. He just mentioned that they teach you that in Economics 101. There's a limited supply, so you have to use your smarts and figure out how to get it, which it suggests all manner of things, doesn't it? Competition, which leads to deviousness, perhaps out-and-out malice. Why in the world does anybody do any harm to someone else? Usually because there's something that's wanted that they're not getting, one way or the other. When if they realize that there's enough for everybody, even people, let's say two people are in love with the same person, and that sets up this number between them. Foolish. If they really, obviously I realize this is easier said than done, but if a person really take a good look at this, they would realize that, okay, one of us is probably, quote, karmically more or less more appropriate or entitled or whatever to this situation or this person. Therefore, whoever the third wheel is, whatever that would be, must realize that there's something else for them. There is. Because the law of supply and demand would stipulate it. There is, Yes?
What about, like, trees? People cutting down trees. There's a certain amount of trees here, or netting, like fish netting, and taking, 20 miles of net and taking all the fish.
You're right. And that exactly is in kind of a violation of the law of supply and demand. But here's why. You see, people, I think, take more and more and more out of greed and out of the consciousness that there is a limited supply. And if they wouldn't have that consciousness of I want it all and just took what was really necessary for the time, we might find, if greed did not enter the picture, I think that the law of balance would preserve a wonderful balance. Do you see what I'm saying? But the fact that people don't believe that and think that if we don't get it now, we're not going to ever get it. And if we don't get it, they're going to. So let's just take 5 times more than what we need. This kind of thing. Then, of course, they upset the law of balance in ecology. And it's that same thing, When people are thinking that there's only a limited supply, they get greedy. And they take more and more and more than what they really need. So theoretically, if everyone, like in the more so-called uncivilized so-called cultures, like the Hawaiian culture, the people just threw their nets out, grabbed what they needed, ate it, and that was it. They had to have it go into sleep. Right? They never worried, is there going to be fish here tomorrow? Oh, no more fish. Never entered their mind. Why? Because the ocean is incredibly abundant. It's got all kinds of fish when we're not greedy. When we're not trying to get 5, 20, 100 times more than what we need and sell it to somebody on the other end of the globe who probably should be doing their own fishing. But we want their money. So you see what I mean? So yeah, it's a good question. But that's how I would answer that. Yeah, that there's enough for when things remain in balance, when people try and go for the greed, and of course they upset it. And then in fact we start dealing with things that appear to be as limits. I would say that if we can eliminate the greed, it will restore itself. It will restore itself in most cases. And the so-called species that have gone extinct, I think we're dealing with a couple of different factors there. We have to remember that some of them. Now we have to remember that because God in the ultimate is incredibly economical. So who knows but that certain species have not at some point or another, due to the law of cycles, beginnings and endings, outlived their usefulness and happen to be the very ones that are, quote, killed out by a greedy populace to show them that this can happen, to kind of serve a dual lesson. Do you see what I mean? There's things that overlap like that. So I'm not saying it's right to kill off any species at all. But I have been tipped off that even the most tragic situations that we have all lamented and maybe cried about have actually had some inner blessing behind it. Really. I who have, for instance, the Native American people and cause very close to my heart, being partially Native American myself, I must say, a bit shocked and startled when I began to hear that from some of the chiefs and those who have gone on in the world of spirit, that they knew that the cycle of their time was coming to an end, which is the reason why a lot of them did not fight. Which always shocked me. That why didn't they just fight the heck out of it? They could have ambushed those white guys, and I just, the anger of all this, the outrage. How could? This was their land. They knew how to hunt, they knew how to hide, they knew all these things. How was it that this other culture came in and just wiped them out within a matter of what, 100 years, less? Gone. Hawaiians the same way. Woo! But there's a resurgence of some of that now too. So the law of supply and demand is something that, again, certain controlling factors on the earth plane, greedy, unbalanced individuals who happen to be in positions of power to teach the masses about the law of free will and what you tolerate you get to keep and all that kind of stuff, have been these villains on the screen of life to arouse, I think, people's awareness and consciousness of what should and should never be. And that these beings have introduced the thought that there's only so much, there's only so much, there's only so much. You see, so then that creates, again, the greed and all that, and it's an imbalance, I think. So that's what the law of supply and demand is all about. And if you think about it, because, there's another thing. There's what they call etheric substance from which all physical things are made. Etheric substance is unlimited. So whatever we need, we can make. There's a few very rare individuals on the planet who demonstrate that daily. One of them is this holy man in India called Sai Baba. Some of you have heard of him. Some of you have heard things that are not very nice about Sai Baba. That's too bad. I think he's a nice man myself. But anyway, when this man wants something, he just puts his hand out and grabs it. It's in his hand. He materializes objects every day, countless times. He doesn't materialize things like money. He materializes things like ash, this stuff called vibhuti, sacred ash. The moral of the materialization is that this is where it all goes. This is where the physical world ends up. Ultimately, all physical things will end up like this, ashes. Do you want to risk your spiritual welfare for this? For a bunch of ashes? It won't even feed you. You see, so there's a moral behind it. He's not just showing off. Occasionally, he'll manifest a ring or something, and he says, here, this is my calling card. You put it on, and it's a tie between you and I. And mind you, that goes into a more subtle law that I'm not sure we need to talk about too much. It's called the law of repercussion. I'll go into it. Why not? The law of repercussion states what? That two different objects that have the same electronic pattern affect each other. Ever heard of voodoo? That's what voodoo is all about, the law of repercussion. That means that if I draw a picture right here of Jim Will sitting right over there, and I put dollar signs all over, and I put gold, and I put all things like that, I'm sending that thought toward the man who's seated over there, though I'm just drawing a little stick drawing. You can all see the negative use of this, right? I don't suggest you try it, because by the law of cause and effect, guess what? Someone's going to do you. You don't want that. So the law of repercussion basically states that there is that sense, you see. So that's how voodoo works. I know none of you are here trying to learn about voodoo, but you might as well, just so you know, just so you know how it works and how also to negate it. Because you got to remember now, voodoo must be to some degree or another accepted, even through ignorance. If you haven't decided something doesn't work for you, ipso facto, it does. Think about it. If I haven't decided I don't want that, then I'm open to it. You go, no, I'm not. I didn't ask for it. Maybe you didn't. But someone else may want to bring that into my world. And if I haven't said no by free will, stipulated that law, then it comes my way. So voodoo works mostly out of ignorance, obviously. And unfortunately, out of the people who come from a culture who accept it from day one. Even in the Aboriginal cultures, you probably know of Australia, they have this thing called a bone with some human hair in it. And the belief is that if the holy man or whatever they call him would aim this bone at you and say the wrong words, you will die. But imagine if from day one you're taught that, you're taught that, you're taught that. Well, it becomes so entrenched that guess what? It happens. It happens. These men can do that, and people drop dead on the spot. Why? Because they've chosen, they've bought it. Free will, they've bought it. So you understand why I'm bringing up voodoo. You don't have to buy that. You can buy that it works, but you don't have to buy that it works on you. That's the main thing with voodoo. It's the law of repercussion. I'll get into this. There used to be these old werewolf movies back in the 40s, Lon Chaney and all that. Some of you might have seen a few of those. And they would sometimes, as the werewolf, they would shoot him or hurt him or something. The next day he'd wake up and he'd have a bruise in the same area where they hit the wolf. Repercussion. See, that's the law of repercussion. It works. It does work. Obviously, the thing to do is use it for blessing. Use it for blessing, Sometimes if you have an altar, you can have something on that altar that represents to you an aspect of deity. And for you, that is so. You see, and by repercussion, by honoring that thing, you're honoring the deity that corresponds to it. This is something that Christian religion has not understood very well. And therefore they've talked about pagan images and false gods. And I don't think there's such a thing as a false god. I really don't. So anyway, that's how the altar works. That's how that stuff works. Okay, let's see here. There is another thing called the law of polarity. The law of polarity. This is the big yin-yang. Yin-yang, up, down, good, bad, black, white, male, female, yes, no, pain, pleasure. Shall I keep going? Get the picture? Polarity. Flip, flip. The law of polarity tends to manifest more and more on the so-called lower levels of life, the physical, the emotional, and the mental. When you transcend into what's called the spiritual, it transcends into a whole new expression, the law of polarity. Suddenly, the law of polarity becomes the inclusion of the two into one thing. See, and that's what happens. The great masters, that have descended here and taken physical form have often been neither male nor female, though they've obviously taken a gender, mostly male, because that's where the current evolution was at the time. Nobody would listen to them if they were women, unfortunately. So they took a male body, and then they became both in one, which means what? That they had the sensitivity, forgiveness, sweetness, love, caring, mothering, everything you would attribute to a woman in the body, in a male body. And all of the attributes of a man that we would think would be positive attributes of a man, all rolled into one. Which is often why they took no wives. They didn't need one. They were their own wife in one body. How convenient. How economical. Think about it. Economics alone would be a good reason for that. No divorce, It long since transcended that one. So, you see? No AIDS. Certainly not. They just complete and total right within their own being. They're right there. So, that's the law of polarity. The law of polarity, though, says a lot. That when you're dealing still in the so-called lower planes where polarity exists, it must be acknowledged, for one thing. And often you'll find that if there is a confusing situation or an area that is unclear in one state of mind, one way to get some clarity is to polarize to the other state of mind. Like what a mediator does. What is a mediator? Someone who sits in the middle and listens to both sides. I hear your complaint, I hear your complaint. Here's what I come up with. Boom. Hopefully something that's just. That's called the law of polarity. It's a polarity. It's listening to both sides. Most of us, if we don't watch it, get stuck in one point of view only, our own. That old, what's that Indian saying about don't judge a man till he walked a mile in his moccasins kind of thing. That's an aspect of the law of polarity. You get to the other side of the issue. You do that. Okay. Like I said, some of these don't need a lot of explanation. Another one is called the law of momentum. Things tend to keep getting greater and stronger and greater and stronger and greater and stronger if they're not stopped or changed or checked in some way. The law of momentum. That's another thing. When you keep that in mind, let's say there's a so-called negative thing that you know of that's going on. If you take no step to stop it, it's unwise to think it's going to get any weaker. It's rather naive. Probably won't. In the long run, sure. But, how long will that take? This is where you can intervene. I had mentioned to you something about that you could invoke judgment or justice on the earth. I had mentioned that to you all. I think I went into it to some degree. That is the thing I had printed up. So I'd like, if you could maybe pass these out. I'm going to read it for you now. Okay, and I hope none of you get shocked. I don't think you will. It's basically an invocation to the lords of karma. Who are the lords of karma? We are told that there are these great and mighty beings who have specialized in cosmic law, like lawyers, like attorneys who become judges. See? Law of correspondences. It's all there. They have become now like judges. What is a judge? Supposedly one who is qualified first by being an attorney, usually. I don't know that you can be a judge without being an attorney. And can sit there and look at supposedly both sides of an issue and decide what's valid and what isn't. That's what happens. So when we're looking at the invocation of the lords of karma, these great beings are those who have done that. They've specialized in cosmic law. They're so good at it that they can take a petition like this. This is called a petition. And they can evaluate it from the point of the law, of pure cosmic law, objectively, absolutely objectively. They will not play favorites. Even if you've been a friend of theirs in a past life. Doesn't matter. Best judges in the cosmos. Okay? So this is called the invocation to the lords of karma. The use of this is a very ancient tool. Very ancient tool. This is nothing new. This is nothing I've just come up with, believe me. I would never try and take such credit. This is something that has gone on for centuries. I'm going to give you an example of how to use it. I'm going to read it. You can. I imagine most of you have a copy of it. Do you? Most of you have a copy. I hope I brought enough. Did I? Okay. I made 90 copies. I think that covers the room. So I hope so. So what it basically is, like I said, is an invitation to these beings to act on the behalf of what's right. We're not asking for favors here. We're not asking for favoritism, much less. You're simply asking that they will evaluate this from the cosmic point of view and do something about it. This is an aspect, Adam, this is an aspect to the law of recourse, which says, to me this is very valuable for that reason. I'm sure all of us here have experienced something in life that has seemed incredibly unjust. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Here are all these people. In fact, I just heard of a case myself, not more than... Does everybody have one now? Does everybody in the room have one? Oh, basically says, in the name of the light of God that never fails, and in the name of that divine spark within me that is the I am presence within all life, obviously the presence of God, I do hereby call to the great lords of karma, those great beings whose mastery of cosmic law enables them now to be the arbiters of men's destiny. That's like a mediator. To hear my call and answer. To indeed answer my call for divine justice and divine judgment in the situation which I now do describe. And it says, here describe the condition you wish to have reviewed, including specific names, places, dates, and violations of the law of love that you feel need correction. So you've got to specifically say this, this, this. Great beings of love, wisdom, and power, I do ask you now to directly intervene in this situation which I have come to report, and to take whatever steps are necessary to restore the balance of justice, to stop all such activities as are in violation of the cosmic honor code, and if necessary, to release an avalanche of personal karma upon those who refuse to stop their attempts to harm, defraud, injure, discredit, and maliciously affect the other individuals involved. Now you'll notice at this point you are not specifically asking for anything bad to happen to them. Please, no offense, but all you bleeding hearts out there, oh no, I wouldn't want to do that. I don't want to hurt anybody. Okay, fine. When the person comes and it rips you off or breaks your arm or kills you, we'll take that under consideration. You know, I don't think we're meant to be doormats on this planet. I do not think that is becoming of a god or a goddess to sit there and take injustice at the hands of an ignorant soul, of a benighted soul. I just don't believe that. And I've got a lot of people up here who we're all in agreement. We're not meant to sit there and take belittlement. You are not. I don't care if you're a man, woman, or what you are. You are not meant to take that.
Plus the other law that you were of momentum.
Yes.
If you can stop the person or people or whoever
Right.
now, then you stop it for everybody.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
And it's like the
you're
sooner
one
the better.
person doing the prayer and all the confusion.
Yes, exactly.
Confusing room.
Absolutely, it's a very good point. Exactly. Because if you don't, you say, well, God, it's not really me. Now, mind you, you can do this no matter if you hear anything. Let's say you hear that so-and-so's out there somewhere and it doesn't even have anything to do with you. You can still do this invocation. You're not being a busybody. You're not doing that. I'll give you an example. Here's an example my guides gave me, and I've shared with a few of you, but I'll repeat it. Let's just say you were minding your own business at home, and your neighbors were gone next door. You knew they were going to be gone for 2 weeks. And you happen to look out and, there's a strange man climbing in the window. What am I going to do? It's not, but it's June, so it's not Santa Claus. And it's the window, not the chimney, and he doesn't have on a red suit. Okay. You're right. The innocent would think, oh, Santa Claus, he's coming to bring gifts. But if you would see that, now you have a choice to make, don't you? You really do. Either to, quote, not get involved, New York style, look the other way while someone's being sliced up right next to you, you know. Oh, well, what do I know? You know. Or you can pick up the phone and call the police. 911. You're not asking them, go over and kill him. I'm sure none of us were in favor of what happened to poor Rodney King. You know, should have gotten some more. You know, I'm sure, you know, none of us like brutality. None of us like any of those things. I see nothing but a sea of light here. You're all souls of light. However, by calling the police, you're simply calling on the proper authorities. You're working through the law of hierarchy. You're doing the proper thing. It would not be the right thing to go over there and personally intervene. Probably not. How do you know? The man may be a full-on professional burglar and he's got a gun in his hand. And you're in his face, bam. Who needs that? The thing isn't to go over there and try and be Superman and get in the way. No. I think that's rather silly. But by calling the police, that's their job. They're trained to do it. They love to do it. Don't they? Though then again, sometimes when you really want them, they're not around. We've all heard that. But anyway, the point is, the proper thing to do is to call them, and they'll come, I'm sure, as soon as they can, and let them deal with it. Now, what if they get there, and it turns out it's the uncle of the person who owns the place, and he's got a note to that effect, and he's got numbers you can call, and it's all cleared up? No problem, right? No problem. But what if he isn't? And you've just caught a burglar who has burgled a bunch of other houses, was about to burgle your neighbors, and after that would go on and burgle some more. I believe you have just done a service to society. Same thing here. Don't be afraid to use this, is what I'm trying to say. There's no harm involved. Please get that clear. Like when I said bleeding hearts, I didn't mean to, be rude. But let's face it, I think some of us are a little bit too sentimental. Just a little bit. Someone hits you, oh, well, he was in a bad mood. Sorry. Hits you again, sorry. I mean, that stuff makes me sick, quite honestly. Only because it's so out of keeping with the true nature of, I think, wisdom, which is not to sit there and take abuse at anyone's hands. I just don't think that's the nature of God. Yes?
Well, to that effect, what about I suppose there are mostly great masters there, but I'm thinking of Gandhi, for example, how he definitely did take some pretty big humiliation.
Right.
Is that just lessons?
Well, you got to remember, Gandhi, I think, was coming from a very traditional Hindu point of view of harmlessness. I believe, and mind you, I have an ultimate respect for Hinduism. I think it's about the oldest religion in the world, from which all the others have sprung. And we understand not harming life. However, and I know it's going to sound very bold on my part. Who am I to say this to 4 million Hindus or how many out there? Who, by the way, again, I totally love. I'm in contact with many Hindu teachers, and it's something I don't in any way disrespect. But you're right. See, you're asking me something. And on the principle of cosmic law, I would think that is something that I think could have possibly been done another way. There are many people, even today in the world, political, experts or whatever, who are not sure that was the best way to accomplish what was accomplished based on what occurred after, with some of the so-called wars that occurred and continue to occur, But again, Gandhi did the best he could do, I'm sure, and I'm sure he's in the high spirit world totally enjoying his wonderful freedom, I'm not sure that was the ultimate way. That's all I can answer you, really. I don't know that that was the ultimate way, was to keep doing it. It did accomplish some things, didn't it? But at great price. I wonder if there couldn't have been another way to do it, you know? Again, Hinduism is, after all, a religion, and from what I can tell, so far as I can see, pretty much every religion, I think, has somewhat gotten a bit codified or into rules and regulations that I don't always change with the times. You know, and I don't know, I just feel that that particular aspect of ahimsa has its value, but I'm not sure it needs to be taken that far. I would call that extreme, frankly. You know, but again, that's just me. But see, I've learned through the aid and assistance of all the spirit force that I work with, that every one of us has got something to say that's valuable. You know, 10, 15 years ago, I would never have dared to comment on Gandhi. I mean, what a great soul, what a great man. You know, who am I to say? But now I realize that no, God is constantly improving upon itself. So Gandhi was wonderful for that time. I'm not sure that's the way to go now. That's a very good, I really welcome, yes. Yes, I would say so. Yeah. Yes. That's what I would say. Absolutely, and that's another good question. All questions are good. I feel that that law of interference you're referring to might refer to the interference with another individual's free will. But I still feel that by calling to a higher court, that there would be some response, and what might occur is that that soul might be shown an alternative. It still ends up her free will. It still ends up her free will, you know, to walk away or stay. So that's, I think that would be the case, yes. Yes.
Also in that case, maybe instead of whoever coming, one of the spouse coming and killing the other, maybe one of that spouse would be held accountable in that area, and the other person held accountable in their area without it having to resort to so much on a physical level.
Right,
you know,
right.
by saying something like this.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you know, it's a good point, because this is what I said in the very first week. I said that what I'm sharing with you all, and mind you, I by no means am claiming to share all the cosmic laws, because there's more. And you'll find in different schools of thought there are different laws. So in one school of thought you might find that. You might find a law like that, you know. And so I've tried to look at the ones that make the most sense to me, or that seem to be the most all-encompassing. And those are the ones that I'm sharing, you know, so that's kind of what's happening there. So I didn't finish reading this thing, did I? Let's go. Okay. I do hereby register this complaint after first having sensed the injustice involved. Now that's an important line, because you're not just doing it to interfere. You're not just doing it on a power trip. You're not just doing it to be a busybody. You're doing it because when you heard of it or experienced it or it first came to notice, you should have felt something, a violation of your heart. If you didn't, you know, I don't do this invocation lightly myself, believe me. Even in cases where it would seem like something is being done, I will think it over carefully before I would do something like this. I don't just, the minute I hear anything of anybody doing anything so-called wrong to someone, right away I whip out the invocation and I'm at it. No, I don't do that. And for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say let's go back to your example. Let's say you know of a couple where this man beats a woman often. I can't stand that violence, by the way, but let's just say that happens. And you've talked to her, and she goes, well, I love him. I'm not sure I would use this. See? I'm not sure I would, because what I would see is she was choosing, she hadn't reached the point where she was realizing that maybe that needed to be done. Then again, in the middle of the night, I might. You know? What the heck? You know? Yes.
Do any harm to do it?
I don't think so. I don't think it would do any harm. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it would do any harm. You know, so I really think I would go ahead and do it. You know, but there are some cases where you see, let's say you see, for instance, a person getting, and this has happened in my own experience, where a person, let's say, is getting, quote, ripped off. And of course that doesn't feel good, and you feel a violation. But upon closer observance, I realize that this person has been kind of skirting the line a little bit themselves. They've been in the little gray areas quite a bit. And suddenly this thing happens to them. You see what I'm saying? I'm not sure I would quickly run and whip out the invocation of the Lords of Karma. I would think and go, maybe this is what they need to have to wake them up. So it's always got to be a heart decision. That's all I can say. It's got to be a decision of the heart. You've got to decide. But let's face it. I know you've all run into cases where the quote powers that be are taking advantage of the so-called little man or little people, and you just feel there's nothing redeeming about this, other than the people may not know where to go. They don't know about the cosmic law. They don't know about the law of recourse. And they just kind of take it thinking, oh, well, God, I know it's not right, but what can I do? They have more money than me. They have more influence. Their uncle is Frank Fosse. Or whoever. I don't have anything against Frank Fosse particularly, but using him as an example, okay? You can't fight City Hall number, see? That kind of thing. And let's face it, at times physically, that is what it looks like. If let's say we all know, I'm sure, in the legal system that justice does not always appear to be served. We've all run into we've all run into that, where there's a case where good and well this person is innocent, and yet they seem to get the short end of the stick. In fact, they end up having to cough up a lot of money, and it's terrible. This is wrong. This is wrong. It doesn't feel right to me. That would be a good time to whip this out and use it. In cases where you can't see the redeeming value of what's going on, you go, I just don't think this is right, and it's been going on too long, and guess what? I want to put a stop to it. And I feel like that power is in my hand. I will use it. Again, no harm. No harm can be done, I don't think. So, let's see. And do also ask that the karmic records of all individuals concerned be reviewed so that divine justice shall be served. What's the purpose of that? For the same reason. Because very often you'll find a so-called offender it's not the first time they're offending. They've usually offended again and again and again and again and again. And how do you know that this offense hasn't come into your line of vision just so that you could call them on the carpet? You could press the stop button. You could blow the whistle, do whatever it takes to end this spiral once and for all. That very likely could be the case. Consider that, please. Again, even if it's something you read in the newspaper that has nothing to do with you, and something in your soul is feeling, because it could just be that in a past life a similar thing went by you and you didn't do a thing about it because you didn't want to get involved. The old New York trip again. No offense if any of you are from New York, but we always hear these stories of people getting ripped to shreds on the street and everybody just walking by, nothing. Nothing. I think something should be done in a case like that. I'm not saying I would jump in and personally intervene, but I just really can't imagine myself walking by and not doing anything.
What if you're concerned about a larger group of people, like an organization or a country? Maybe you fear to give specific names.
Well, I would just mention the country and what you feel is out of alignment and who you feel may be the perpetrator or perpetrators and in what way you feel they may be doing this thing. It's the best you can do, That's all, yeah. Because you're right, you may not know the names and all that. Like people think in terms of the so-called the mafia, the mob, Let's say you have a friend who just opens a business and about 2 months into it they get a weird little call. Hey, kick up some money for protection. And they don't want to, and then their place gets bombed. Thank God I don't think we have to deal with that too much here. Maybe we do, I don't know about that. But if so, that would be a case. What are you going to do, go take on the mob? Of course not. But you could do this. You could call for that to occur, yes.
On the other side of this, making people accountable for their deeds, what can we say to protect ourselves? Who can we call upon, like Michael, or what can we call upon to protect ourselves
from
say,
retaliation? You mean, or what?
Just protect ourselves from negative energies coming our way, or if we find ourselves in a negative situation, so that we come out just pure, that it kind of bounces off of us.
Okay, that's again a good question because again, by calling for protection, the premise is that you're sensing vulnerability to begin with, right? Or you wouldn't even think of it.
Right.
So let's say you sense yourself vulnerable in a particular situation. Then again, by free will, you're choosing to not allow that state of vulnerability to persist, right? You're saying, therefore, I need to do something. I don't want to become concave. I want to become convex. I want to do something, cause and effect, to create a situation where I cannot be harmed, right? Or as close as possible. Obviously, your personal karma will be a factor here. But then what you would do is like what you're saying. Then you would think, and it depends on how many you know, the Archangel Michael happens to be one of the beings who has been designated as one whose role or specific mission has been to defend or protect the righteous, let's say. And obviously you'll be thinking of yourself as being righteous or worthy of protection. That would be one thing. If you don't either believe or know about the Archangel Michael, then what you do, you just call for the protective agencies of spirit. You don't even have to know their names. Archangel Michael is a very specific being and has a very specific office, that of protection. But you could just say, I call in the name of my own higher self. I call in the name of the divine spark within me. I call for the protection of all that I am, all that I stand for, my image, my integrity, my honor, my health, my physical safety, and that of all those around me. I invoke this, I call it forth, and I know that it shall be done. The point is that you make the call. You make the call for it, yeah. And again, some people might not be comfortable. Maybe they might have been raised Catholic, and Archangel Michael reminds them of their Catholic days when the nun was grabbing them out of the air and stuff, and they don't like that anymore. So, okay, fine. Or maybe you're a Muslim or something, and maybe Archangel Michael, I'm not sure if he's part of their cosmology or whatever. Then you wouldn't feel comfortable. And it's good to realize that and be honest about it, because if you don't feel comfortable with Archangel Michael, don't use him. Don't call him. Because deep inside, you'll be kind of negating it, you see, a little bit. So it's better to say, I acknowledge that there's some force in the universe that can protect me. I acknowledge that there's a divine power that can protect me, and that's the power I'm calling to. Whatever name you want to give it, you may not even give it a name. That would be the way you would deal with that. Okay. I do also ask that if karmic restitution or retribution be in cosmic order, that such shall occur immediately. What does that mean? Obviously, that if you feel like someone has taken unjustly or is in the process of trying to take unjustly from someone else, you're not only asking for the stopping of that spiral, but you're also asking that it be reversed and that the person who has been defrauded be given back what is theirs. And that you're specifically calling for that. See, you're specifically calling for, it's not enough that it stop. I want justice to be done, and that if anyone has lost what they shouldn't have, that these things be restored to them. So that's what that's all about. Such shall occur immediately. I especially ask for the binding of any such activities in the future. You're basically taking the responsibility of someone who walks around and picks up litter. It's not your litter, but it's there, and you're on earth, and you want a beautiful, clean earth. So you go out of your way, and you do something of correspondences that has its correspondences on higher levels. You're doing something on a higher dimension that corresponds here as well. And that's what that's about. The binding of any entities, whether seen or unseen, known or unknown, embodied or disembodied. I want to cover the bases there, right? Who have had any role in encouraging such things in any form. Why would you mention this? Very good reason, because very often, you've heard people say, the devil made me do it. Well, very often, it just so happens that unwitting humans are in fact the pawns of those who you can't see, who are maybe even far more malicious or vicious than the physical person doing the act. And they wait for a moment of weakness. Maybe the person's low vibration. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they're experiencing anger or disappointment toward another person. The old tempting devil trip. That's what that is. Whatever. Maybe they're drunk and out of control. Drugs, alcohol, whatever. That happens. Or an entity can come and obsess or go around you, and because you don't have the awareness that that's what's going on, people just go ahead and are, as easily it is for an astral being usually to move one of us here that is unaware, as it is for a cowboy to herd cattle. Believe me, it is. So you see why then you would call for the binding of the force behind. You're calling for the binding of any entities that have had anything to do with this thing, because in all likelihood there probably are. Law of correspondences, as above, so below. So there's going to be, you have your friends down here, you got your friends up there. We all do. We all do. And I would think twice if I were any of you listening, well, I don't have any entities. You probably have some very nice ones. Think about that. Your guides are entities, aren't they?
We want good ones. Then.
Sure. So you would call for the binding of any, you're taking away the root. You see, you're taking the cause away. It's like chopping down a plant you don't like on the top. Well, the roots there, it'll just grow right back again. So that's what you want to do. Okay. Let's see here. I call upon the flame of forgiveness to also be released into this situation, and that the whole karmic pattern be raised into the hands of the divine and taken out of human hands once and for all. Why the law of forgiveness? Why the flame of forgiveness? Simply because even if you can stop a situation, unless there is forgiveness and understanding, the chances of it occurring again are there. Retaliation, revenge, resentment, it's there. Let's say you stop. Let's say one person is, quote, taking advantage of another, and you make a call and it stops. Okay, fine. The one who was taken advantage of might still hold on their breast, and I'm just going to wait around. I'm glad they got theirs, but you know what? That's not good enough. I'm going to get them. See? Human nature helps. So the flame of forgiveness, to kind of just let it go as much as possible. Clear it up. Okay, that's there. I am grateful for all that is done, believing that I have done my part in checking this type of unwise activity, and ask that if there be any further action that I can possibly take, that it be shown to me directly and without delay. Meanwhile, I remain in the full faith that all that can be done shall be done, and that the justice of God shall be served. You are casting your vote. You're saying, this is what I feel this is doing, and so be it. You see, it's part of the law of recourse. You don't have to just sit there and be humiliated or angered or resentful that a very unjust activity is going on, and be a victim, basically. You're essentially a victim at that point. There's nothing I can do about it, nothing I can do. That's never true. Never, 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 never true. And you'll notice that there's a little blank line. Guess what that's for? Sign your name. It's called commitment. Sign your name. Okay? Now, there's many ways you can use these, but one of the commonest I've heard of is this. In that the situation, in all likelihood, might take some concentrated effort. The way to do it is, the first day that you're going to use this, you would want to make copies of this right away. And then you would sign your name onto it, and you would read it 3 days in a row. Why? The law of numbers, the law of multiples, more power. And then on the third day, guess what? You burn it. You burn it. Why do you burn it? You burn it to let it go. Exactly. It's gone out of this dimension. It's out of your hands. It goes directly where it needs to go. Okay? That's it. I mentioned, we talk consistently about cosmic law, and then we talk about clairaudience, and we've even delved into trance states to a degree. Well, clairaudience, as I've shared with you, is one of the commonest, I feel, psychic abilities, in that pretty much everybody is clairaudient. I don't feel it's something you have to try and so much develop, as opposed to you might have to get clear about what it is, how to recognize it when it happens, and how to, in a sense, turn it on at will, or shall we say, shift your attention in that area so you can seem to turn it all on at will. In effect, it's always occurring. Now, I'm sure that most of you here have experienced a situation in life where suddenly you really had to deal with something very serious. It suddenly was upon you at that moment, okay? Many of us, if we were raised in any kind of a church-going or, spiritual, religious background, have been taught to pray. And at that point, you probably are on your knees and just, calling on God and everybody else, to please help you. Well, clairaudience occurs when a person really, really wants to know and really, really wants to hear. There's an interesting mixture of earnestness, sincerity, honesty, and fearlessness that seem to work together to create the conditions under which one receives things clairaudiently. In other words, it's not the kind of thing where, you just kind of sit and just go, well, let's see, is anybody up here talking to me? No, I guess not. Okay, well, that's what I thought. Bye. It's not, I would say don't sell yourself so short so quickly. Clairaudience occurs when a person has you learn to reproduce that feeling of like, I really, really want to hear this. I really want to get this. There's got to be a great amount of sincerity and earnestness to this thing. It's almost like you can't do it haphazardly. It doesn't work too well. So, you learn to reproduce that feeling so that you can turn it on at will. You can turn it on at will. For instance, in the so-called giving of messages, some of you have experienced what we call a message service. Some of you may have seen me doing it or other people doing it. It involves the medium, the sensitive, getting in front of a group of people like this and basically volunteering themselves to become a go-between between the spirit world and the people in the physical body. So that person, let's say in this case myself, will sit there and I will say, okay, I'm going to see what Spirit has to say. Now, due to the fact that I've done it a few times, I have a little practice. But what you would basically do is at that point you would get into a very sincere, earnest feeling like, I really, really want to hear. I really want to know what is it that Spirit is trying to tell this person. I really want to know that, you know. This is not a game. It's not something I'm just, well, if I hear something, fine. If I don't, that's cool too. You know, one doesn't leave it quite so, you know, so I guess what I'm saying is you really engage your heart. You really engage your heart and soul. You engage the real essence of who and what you are. So that's what clairaudience is about. And to illustrate that to you, here's what I'm going to do. Last week we did a technique which I want to reproduce this week, and it's this. I'm going to ask you all to listen clairaudiently for certain topics that I'm going to be suggesting, to just kind of open and hear. And again, the agreement is that the spirit guides of everybody here are going to be very much working with you. So please know that. Know that your spirit guides are working with you. I've been asked the question, well, how do I know what I'm getting isn't just from my intuition instead of a spirit guide? It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The idea is to develop the clairaudience sense of being able to receive information when it comes. That's the bottom line. You know, you can say it came from your higher self. You can say it came from a spirit guide. You can say it came from an outer space being. You can say it came from a menahuni. It really doesn't matter. The point is you're listening to spirit guidance. You're listening to the voice of spirit, the so-called still small voice. That's the bottom line. That's the point. You see what I mean? So right now, let's not split hairs and say, well, I didn't hear it because it didn't come from my guide, Golden Eagle. Or it didn't come from so-and-so, or whatever. You know, I don't think we're in a position where we need to do that. So if you would, open up to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you all to be listening for certain things. I didn't bring my little bell, unfortunately, tonight, so sorry. I can't ring the bell when the session's over and it's time to phase into the next thing. I'll just say, okay, enough of that, and we'll do that. So I'm going to ask you to listen for a few things, then we're going to stop, and I am going to ask you to share, because very often in sharing, you bring out into the physical what has been a subjective or inner experience for you. And you'll find that by putting words on your experience, it validates it. It becomes more real. It's suddenly something it's in your hand. Or at least it's on your lips. And the point is it becomes physical. You translate it at that moment. It literally comes through the veil the moment you speak about it. See? Kind of interesting. Okay? So let's all just kind of get in a nice, calm state. And the first thing... oh, by the way, I should say this. I think this will help some, if not all. I studied for years with a mystic on Kauai by the name of Subramanya Swami. He's a very, very beautiful being, very advanced being, I think, very highly realized. He lives up by the Wailua River. He's got a wonderful temple up there. And he teaches that the very states of realization would go attention first, observation next, concentration next, meditation next, contemplation, and that leads to samadhi, which is full realization. So it starts with attention. And that means you put attention on the fact that you're listening, on the fact that you want to receive input. Next comes observation. You put your attention there, which means you're not thinking what you're going to watch when you go home on TV. You're not thinking of what's going to happen, tomorrow. It's all right here and now, right? That's the main point of it, To some of you, this might seem kind of trite, and I've heard it all before. But in fact, if any of us had mastered it, I'm not sure we'd be in this room. No offense, but I haven't, and frankly, I don't think any of you have either, okay? So if you have, you teach me after class, okay? But I really think, these things bear repeating again and again and again. Before the conscious mind, I've heard that already. The conscious mind is like a little kid, very spoiled. And it always wants something new. Give me new, give me new, give me new. Its attention span's about 1/4 of an inch long. But we need to overcome that by a sense of real purpose of the soul. So attention, observation, concentration, meditation, contemplation, and samadhi. Those are the phases. Now you may not go into samadhi as you're doing this, okay? I'm not necessarily expecting that, but the point is you can at least start with the beginning steps and you'll know kind of where to progress, okay? All right. Now, here's what I'd like you to listen for. I would like you to listen for what right now is the most, be ready to receive input on what right now is the single most important issue of your life. And I'm sure if you give it a little bit of thought, you'll know exactly what that is. There's bound to be one. Don't tell me you've got 5. Narrow it down, please. There's got to be the single most, and if you don't know it, then it's time to get in touch with that. The single most important issue of your life. Please just be still and listen for it and be open to receive and see what information comes to you. After a while, we'll phase into the next thing. But for now, that's, I think, important enough to listen for. Whatever thoughts come, whatever revelations, whatever new insights, consider them as being shared with you, given to you. Okay, gently begin to let that fade. Try to just record that in your inner self. The next thing that we'd like you to put your attention on has to do with clairaudience itself. The very thing you're doing. Listen for your friends in spirit to share with you how it is that for you specifically that functions, perhaps under what conditions, and how you can make better use of it, either now or into the future. So the subject is clairaudience itself. Ask if you would, to be shown more about it, so you can be a better clairaudient. Okay, now let's gently let that one go. Try to recall what you've been shown. We have one last thing we're going to be listening for. The last thing we're going to be listening for is this. All of us carry with us constantly an atmosphere. It is known as your aura. The aura tends to be visible to psychic sight, but much more than visible, it tends to be an atmosphere that others feel and react to. Very few of us ever really contemplate our own auras, but now's the time to do that. If you would, put your attention, and we're not so much going for colors here, we're going for feelings, we're going for qualities, we're going for attributes, things about your personal aura that are always there. In other words, it's a time to be extremely objective, as if you or someone else looking at you, but again, with the input that you will be getting from spirit. Just see what you are shown and told about your aura that perhaps you've never thought about, never noticed, or have taken for granted, so that you can expand on that which should be expanded on, and possibly change that which does not serve you or the people that you deal with, okay? So that's the last topic on this particular clairaudience cycle, and after this we were going to have you share a little bit about whatever your experience has been. But for now, you're really asking for your friends in spirit or whoever to show you something about your own aura and its effect on life at large and in general. We worked with 3 different things. The most important issue in your life right now. That's one you may and may not want to share with your partner. That's totally up to you. The next one. What was the next one? Clairaudience. Clairaudience. The very activity itself, so that we can take an objective look at it. And the last one was the atmosphere that you shed, or your aura. Input being had. So whatever you feel like sharing, feel free. Share with your partner, and take turns. I'm going to allow just a little time for this, and then we're going to go into some trance work. And that's how we're going to round out the evening. I'm going to go into the last facet of our class for this night, and that has to do with, I've talked about trance states. I don't want to go all over again into the value of trance states. The word itself, I know, has a interesting connotation. Many of you all have your own reaction possibly to that term trance, whether it be good, not so good, whatever, scary. But really, as I've said before, I just want to quickly reiterate that we were born with these minds, we were born with this incredible consciousness, but very few of us were given like an owner's manual, right? We weren't shown how to use them. All we got was school, we really knew was concentration, usually for the most part. Basically, memorization, right? If you can remember what the book says and pass the test, you pass the grade, and so do you progress. Well, I think it's time that we start to work a little bit with our internal atmosphere, which is the consciousness of each one of us. And what we've done is we've worked with trance states in 3 different levels. We have set it up in such a way that you can have symbols that correspond with levels of consciousness, so that later you can learn to do this more quickly. I think it's a very useful tool. I feel that as time goes on and your lives unfold, you'll find 101 uses for being able to get into altered states. I've had personal experiences where somebody close to me suddenly sustained a physical injury like a very sharp cut, for instance. And what I was able to do is think fast, put myself in a trance state, and basically catch the person's consciousness in tow, pull them in and said, now do this and all will be well. And there's 2 people in this room right now who can attest to that, both of whom cut themselves and were bleeding and the whole shot, and because of that, we're able to feel no pain. The situation healed up very quickly and very easily, and I think probably without much in the way of scar tissue. So that can be done, you see. And believe me, it's the knowing that you can shift your state of consciousness. It's knowing you can do something. It's the law of recourse, that when push comes to shove, you'll step right into it. You don't have to sit and breathe and go through all that. The fact is, you'll know that you can do something. You'll know that something can be done, and that's so important. I can't say it enough. And to know that in any situation, you're never at the end and there's no hope. Okay, that's very important to remember that. Okay, so we've said that the first level of trance would be symbolized by a pyramid, right? So I'm going to have you go into that first. The second one by a star, the symbol of a star. That star could have as many points as you like, any color you like, any size you like. And the third level would be that of a sunburst of pure white light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to first go into the first level, which has to do with the pyramid. I'm going to suggest a few things there. We're going to take you to the second, to the third, and then bring you back again. And again, we'll end it with a sharing. So, because again, in the sharing, you're able to experience yourself, what you've seen inwardly in an outer way. And so you can also learn, we can learn from each other, okay? So if you would, please begin to move into an inner state just by breathing, calming yourself. Breathing, calming yourself, and going into an inner state. Visualize a pyramid. Visualize a pyramid. It corresponds to the first level of trance, the first depth of trance. Just breathe. Visualize a pyramid. Take yourself into a nice trance state, an altered state is what we would call that. Guides are telling me that a few of you could use to breathe a little bit more if you would. So loosen up your chests a bit and just take a few more breaths if you would. This is a relaxed state of mind we want to be in. Just keep visualizing that pyramid. I believe we had made it golden in color. A beautiful golden pyramid. And to your subconscious mind, that symbolizes the first level of trance. Golden pyramid. I'm going to wait until I see that the majority of you are in that state. You're pretty close now. So let's check that out. Just kind of stay with it if you would. There's nowhere to go. Just put your attention on the pyramid and just stay there as if you were in Egypt, looking at one of the great pyramids right now. You would just be there. And in that state, the first thing I would like you to contemplate is where you yourself will be in 5 years' time. Approximately 1998. Where will you be? You can know that. You can know that. For you are a multidimensional soul who exists beyond what we call present time. You can put your attention forward approximately 5 years into the future and see what you are shown by your own insight. See what you are shown. 5 years hence, the year approximately 1998. Relax yourselves into it if you would. You have really nothing to lose, perhaps much to gain. Falls under the heading of knowing yourself, past, present, future. Allow yourself to receive impressions. told that 1 or 2 are having a little difficulty because they don't realize they're not allowing it. You have to allow it. It's a choice you make, you see? You have to allow it. Allow yourself to see where you will be in 5 years. Good, very good. Okay? Gently let that go. Do not bring yourself out of trance. In fact, we want you to go a little deeper. This symbolized by the second phase, which would be symbolized by a star. So if you would, seek to see a star within yourself. Any kind of a star that comes to you. Breathe deeply. Allow yourself to go into the deeper state of trance. Once you get that star pattern, stay with it. Again, there's nowhere to go. These are landmarks in the inner landscape. So if you get there before everybody else, just rest with it, be with it. Come to feel the familiarity of that state of mind and the difference between that and the previous one. It should be deeper. Now, in this state of mind, what we'd like you to contemplate is something that, again, 5 years hence, 5 years into the future, something that back in 1993 may have represented a major block or a major obstacle, a major fear perhaps, a major worry, some major challenge to your life in 1993. What has become of it? What has it evolved into? All things evolve. Seek to know, following the line of evolution, what the 1993 problem, concern, fear, or worry has become in 5 years' time. It will naturally have changed and evolved. Okay, maybe you've glimpsed that now. Now we're going into the final and deepest state, and this one symbolized by a sunburst, a beautiful burst of pure white light that to your subconscious mind correlates with your deepest state of trance, where you're completely relaxed and very consciously conscious within yourself. This one, a very special state of mind. If you find yourself slipping out, please just breathe yourself back in. Part of the exercise here is to have a sense of control. So you don't want to say, oh, I lost it. It's like dropping something. You just stoop down and pick it up again. That's all. So you want to try and allow yourself to get into that nice, deep state of mind. It has to do with a sunburst. Relax yourself into it. And again, 5 years into the future, what would appear to be 5 years into the future, What we want you to see and experience, if you would, and you can do that right in the eternal now, is what your concept of God will be in 5 years. Divine mind. We all have a concept of that. Perhaps it's far more important than most of us realize. Try to relax, please. Try to relax. Just breathe. Breathe and let go. No harm can come to you. There is nothing to be apprehensive about. Breathe and allow yourself to relax. Throw your attention 5 years into the future and enter into what will be your divine concept, or the concept of what the divine mind, God, all that is, has evolved into. There is benefit in this if you can just allow yourself to have that beautiful, beautiful experience. Only you can do it for yourself. That's the thing. Attention strays, please gently bring it back and stay with this wonderful concept. This should not just be an intellectual experience, but a true experience of the soul. Allow that wonderful experience to just soak right into you. It is yours forever. Gently begin to bring your attention, by a choice, by an act of your will, fully into the physical body again. One way to do that is to focus on your physical heart. Feel your heart. Feel its beat. Feel the warmth of your physical body. Feel the love fire. Refocus back into this room, back into your body. Gently bring yourself back. I want you to all realize something too, and that is this. For many of you, you may not be what we would call real experienced meditators. That's okay. We've all got to start somewhere, So please don't berate yourself, or don't think, oh, I don't ever see anything, or I don't ever get anything. I have always felt in classes and things I used to take that I wasn't getting anything. I wasn't picking anything up. Everybody else was more psychic than I was. So if you're feeling that, join the club. Everybody feels that. Everybody feels a little bit, kind of from time to time, a little bit of psychically, worthless, or not getting anything. Or not true at all. Share now what you'd like with your partner, okay? And then we'll be winding it up in a few moments. My goal in this class to acquaint you with cosmic law, to acquaint you with how clairaudient you are, and to acquaint you with the fact that you can pass into a trance state at will. What I find is that those simple things, unknown to the masses, unknown to most people, are the most natural things in the world, aren't they? I mean, when you think about them, aren't they natural now? They really are. I would think so. I would like you to think of yourselves as being knowledgeable in cosmic law, as being good clairaudience, and as being able to go into trance for any particular purpose whenever you choose to. You know, again, even though someone like myself can come up here and really try to, you know, facilitate, and like I always say, create what I call a hothouse atmosphere so that you can all, you know, unfold more quickly than you normally would, because, again, in the daily rounds, we rarely have a chance to sit and do this kind of stuff. You're never asked to. In fact, you're never allowed to, you know. So when it all works, then you find that those things indeed are there. It's a very natural thing. So that's really what I really attempted to do. And I have seen, as I've looked at you all, especially in meditative states, and I've seen you all taking steps. Some might have appeared to be baby steps, some might have appeared to be giant steps. But you know, there's no such thing as sitting to meditate and not having benefit. Even though it's not always flashing lights, it's not always the big drama, it's not always, you know, Saint somebody coming to talk to you. I can count the times that's happened on one hand after 20-some years doing this, you know. So anyway, I just really want to, you know, share with you all the fact that these things, though they can be offered to you, though you can experience them, yet will never become really a part of you unless you pick it up and take it home. Okay? That's the thing I want you to do. I'd love you to take everything we've experienced here, pick it up, put it in your heart, and take it home. Okay? It's yours. It's really, really yours. God bless you, and we'll see you in the future. Okay? Aloha.